Hello, everybody. What's going on? Welcome back to the Go with the Flow NHL podcast, brought to you by Let Me Be Frank Sports. Nick Phillips here, joined by just one line mate this week, Dan Merritt's, live from the good old white north of Minnesota. How you doing, bud?
Not so bad, man. How about you?
Good, good. As you can tell, Dan's a little under the weather.
I am.
He's been getting in one. Congrats to our man on an upcoming graduation.
Thank you, sir.
So congrats to Dano on hitting the books hard and graduating. I'm just a corporate shill working, but we obviously making time to do this. And we've got our buddy Kevin's been very much under the weather. He tried to grind it out, but he's not doing the recording, but we'd like to thank him in advance for doing the editing of our show. But we've got a bit to talk about. Just going to be Dan and I going, I think, back and forth. But we're going to do some recaps of the second round series and then our previews and predictions real quick just for the conference finals for the East and the West. So, Dano, I don't know if there's any series in particular you wanted to get into. I know this will be dropping on Friday. We're talking right now on Thursday night. So we won't know the result of Boston, Carolina game one, but maybe we can start with one of those series in the East and move west. So whichever one you want to start with, just maybe give your thoughts on if you were surprised. I think, if I recall correctly, we were recording in the middle of the Carolina New York game 4, which hadn't gone final, but it was 3-0 Carolina. So I think we kind of knew, but maybe we just touch on that real quick. If you want to go
ahead. Well done to Carolina with the sweep. I don't think a lot of people saw this coming. I had Carolina, I think in like 5 or 6 games. Believe it was 6. So surprised to see the sweep. Congrats to them. They looked tremendous. They never really gave the Islanders much of anything. Game 2 probably was the best sort of chance for New York, and they just screwed up for 48 seconds, and that's all Carolina needed to seal that one. And then they came home and just absolutely played out of their minds. I think the thing that's most impressive about that series is the amount of people that were hurt. For Carolina, you had Mrazek pull something like a groin or a hamstring. Trevor Van Riemsdyk went down with some sort of hand/wrist injury. First shift of the game I think that was game 2. Both those were game 2 because then McElhinney came in. What a performance by him coming in and being able to finish out the series. Props to them. Props to New York, too. I think a lot of people doubted them. I know I picked Pittsburgh. I think all 3 of us picked Pittsburgh to win that, and they certainly shut us up. I brought up a stat before the Islanders-Canes series, and I'm going to bring it up again because the Canes swept the Islanders. The team that, if there's a team that goes the distance, goes all 7 games like Carolina did, and they face a team that swept in the previous round, the team that goes to game 7 wins every time. So Carolina keeps up with that stat. It'll be interesting to see what happens here. Obviously, Boston didn't go to 7 games with Columbus, but, they've been on the ice in game situations a little bit more recently than Carolina. I guess do you want to talk about the past series first before breaking down Boston, Carolina? You want to go over Boston, Columbus, and
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we'll just do all the I think the second round series, then we'll do the conference finals at the end. But just to touch on it was just kind of the way it was going. I think we kind of knew Carolina was probably going to take care of business up 3-0 when we last talked, but I think kind of New York's offense kind of reared its ugly head where they were playing great team defense, just getting enough scoring to get by against Pittsburgh. But, man, Carolina's D is really good, and Slavin's really stepped up. And, I think New York was in the bottom third of the league in scoring all year, and they didn't really come out and bury a lot in that series against Carolina. And, just for Carolina to go in there, steal the first game in overtime, a game that the Islanders should have won, and then 2 quick goals in game 2, and then you just get in front of that crowd and you're playing well and you've got all the momentum, and you're flying high. And I think momentum's a real thing, right? Because Carolina played Game 7. They had played game action more recently, and New York kind of had time to just sit there and twiddle their thumbs a little bit. So yeah, unfortunate there for the Islanders, but Trotz got a lot out of that team. That was a team that wasn't expected to do a whole lot, especially with Tavares leaving. So interesting offseason ahead there on the island. With Anders Lee, Brock Nelson, and Jordan Eberle all as unrestricted free agents. So very interested to see what happens there as we move on. We got a lot of hockey left, but obviously when the draft and free agency come up, they got some interesting moves to make, or Lou Lamoriello does, I guess.
Certainly, and that's
yeah.
a good sort of segue into Boston and Columbus, talking about people that are leaving, because Columbus is. Well, this is going to be really interesting as Columbus fans. They were definitely all in on these playoffs, and I'm really glad that they got to see a little bit more than just one round of playoff hockey. I had Boston moving on against Columbus, but a lot of me was rooting for Columbus. I'm a big fan of Torts. Obviously, as Hawks fans, all three of us are big fans of Panarin. And everything that he brings to the table. Bobrovsky played amazing, probably the best Blue Jacket night in and night out for them in both the Tampa and Boston series. And you really need to give Rask some props as well on the back end in terms of goaltending. And he's kind of a guy that's always been under the microscope, maybe a little bit more than he probably should be. Boston fans are very tough on him. I think NHL fans in general are tough on him. He often gets overlooked. So I think he's got a lot to prove, and a lot of people to shut up, and he's certainly doing a good job of that. But Columbus, they did a great job of keeping their big studs, keeping Boston's big studs off the score sheet. Marchand, Bergeron, Pasternak, all them. And in the end, they just couldn't quite sustain that. Some wild games. What was it? What was the game? The third period. It was just back and forth the whole time. And Pasta finally buried the one to finish it like 4-3. Was that game 5, I believe?
Geez, I'm having a brain fart here.
I'm pretty sure that's game 5, but I don't know. As far as I'm concerned, it was okay.
Yeah, it was at home, and then they clinched. Yeah, it was definitely.
Yeah, because the first 2 Boston games were overtime games, and that one didn't go. But yeah, Boston looks scary. They finally figured out how to get their big guns going. Call it what you want, but kind of a pivotal event, I guess you could say, that happened was Marchand's punch. Because after that, he turned it up a notch. I think he needed something to get himself going a little bit, and that's one of those things. Stepping on sticks, licking guys, punching people. I know there's a ton of people that hate him. There's some things I wish he didn't do. As far as the stick breaking goes, I think it's hilarious because they really don't have to pay for that. I mean, I would be pissed as a player because that's coming out of my pocket, but at the NHL level, I think that's just kind of funny. Yeah, it's scummy. It's definitely scummy, but it's funny. The punch to the back of the head, like we were saying last week, kind of wish he didn't do it, but he got himself going. He got the boys going, and they kind of turned that around because Columbus was looking really good and in control and being able to keep them off the score sheet, and then they just couldn't do it. And Game 5 is definitely the game that comes to mind where they just struggled a little bit with Boston's big guns, and now it's going to be Carolina's job to try and do that tonight and the rest of the series. So I'm excited for this Eastern Conference Final. I know a lot of people are, there's no good teams left. As far as I'm concerned, this has been one of the most. I know there's some recency bias here, obviously, because it's happening as we speak. But as far as just wild and every night games entertainment, this is probably one of the best playoffs I can think of. In recent memory, regardless of who wins.
Yeah, just really interesting there with Boston. One thing I wanted to mention is the Charlie McAvoy suspension. Boston, I think a key component for them in the having success against Columbus was guys like Brandon Carlo and Charlie McAvoy were fantastic for them on the back end. Yeah, the big guns for Boston did get held off the score sheet, but then at the end, Marchand and Pasternak making big plays and even getting some unexpected depth scoring. I mean, Backus gets a goal there and in game 6, who had been healthy scratched earlier in the series and everything. You know, Krejci got a goal in game 6, and yeah, like you said, Tuukka was a wall. So I mean, yeah, they're getting contributions from young guys. Charlie Coyle stepped up. He had been a little sorry, I got something in my throat, but guess something go with the flow sickness is going around, I guess. But yeah, I don't really know, but yeah, I mean, Charlie Coyle stepped up and had some big moments in this series, and yeah, it's just Boston's getting contributions from top line players, vets, young guys. Just they're looking like a force with the goaltending. So yeah, we'll talk about Boston and Carolina conference finals in a sec, but we had 2 game 7s out west, and I think it's safe to say that the St. Louis Blues thoroughly. Oh, and just one more thing to note. Sorry, not to jump all around the place, but I had the Islanders winning, and I had Boston, so I batted 500 in the second round. But
well, let me tell you, I'm doing a lot better than the first round. The first round was rough. Second round, I'm doing. I think I was 4 for 4. Second round.
I got both in the West, though, correct. Well, nice job, Dan. Yeah, I got both in the West, correct, with San Jose and St. Louis. But maybe we'll start in the Central Division, go chronologically, as that game happened first. With St. Louis, at least in my opinion, I don't think a lot of people would really argue it, absolutely dominated that game.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it was just a shooting gallery. And Ben Bishop made so many big saves, and I still can't believe that wraparound didn't go in double overtime with Binnington going
yeah.
right to left.
Oh my gosh,
his pad was behind the line. I mean, who was that? Sagan
it was Sagan, I believe. Yeah, if he doesn't
just
throw
tucks it,
if he tucks it, Binnington still it hits his pad, but it hits the part of the pad that's completely in the net.
Oh,
and he just couldn't tuck it, and
I thought that was it.
Yeah, that was. I just brought up entertainment factor that game. Holy crap! Like, I was sitting watching it, and I'm like, please, more hockey, more hockey. This is unbelievable. The Stars were under siege. They had 2 shots from the second period and the third period. They had like 2 shots in 40 minutes. It was all St. Louis all of the time, all 5 periods. Dallas actually did come out to play really well in the overtimes. They played way better in the overtime periods than they did in regulation. Absolute fact on that one. They had some tremendous scoring chances, and Binnington, of course, you would expect him to be up to the task, and not to take anything away from him, but the other guy in the net at the other end. That's the best performance of his career.
Yeah, probably.
By far. And he let in some absolute stinkers this series and last series.
Yep.
Both series against Nashville and St. Louis, he let in some absolute stinkers. But Tuesday night, he was an unstoppable force. He was an absolute brick wall in net. And finally, they got the puck on net, and Pat Maroon, big boy, scoring on his fellow St. Louis native. It was 2 St. Louis boys going at it. And honestly, I couldn't be happier for Pat Maroon. He left a ton of money on the table to go play in St. Louis and play and be with his son. If the folks listening haven't seen his son's reaction, get the tissues out, because it's unbelievable, his son's reaction to his father scoring the Game 7 overtime winner. Just good stories all around. Obviously, Dallas, nothing to hang your heads on. It was a good run. It would have been nice to see them in a Western Conference final. We haven't seen them there in ages. But there's a nice little picture on Twitter and Instagram too, I think, and it's a perfectly timed photo. Nick, I don't know if you saw it, maybe Kevin's seen it too. I don't know, but
Is it
it's
with
when
Bishop? Is it
yeah,
Bishop
it's
and
when Bishop and
with a
Maroon are
flag?
shaking hands, and the girl, the St. Louis Ice girl, is skating around with the St. Louis flag, and it's just perfectly in the background as the two of them are smiling and laughing, and shaking each other's hands. So that was kind of a feel-good story, but that's all you look for in playoff hockey and Game Sevens is just entertainment factor. And I tell you, I've never been more into games where I really don't care which team wins. As Central Division rivals, obviously you come to not like Dallas and you come to not like St. Louis. But I was so invested into that game. It was absolutely unbelievable. And St. Louis is rolling, man. They are rolling on all cylinders. They look scary. I would be very scared if I was San Jose. But at the same time, they look really good too. They got Joe Pa back, and holy shit, did he come out to play for Game 7
Yeah.
as well.
Mm-hmm.
He's been out since Game 7 against Vegas, comes out, goal and assists, not a big deal. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts? What are your thoughts on all that?
Well, yeah, just one more quick note on the St. Louis Dallas series. I mean, I think Kevin had brought it up on one of the last episodes, and it kind of reared its ugly head. Was the Stars are a very top heavy team at forward. Obviously
Yeah,
getting
absolutely.
Zuccarello was a big pickup, and that Rupi Hintz kid from play. But yeah, it's like you rely on Ben and Sagan, and you know what? In the last two games of that series, they scored one goal in each game. I mean, that's asking a lot out of Bishop. They had an offensive stinker at home, and they just got dummied defensively by St. Louis. St. Louis played an unbelievable 200-foot
Yeah,
game against
yeah.
them.
They were. I think Dallas was going to have to win that Game 6 if they were going to win. I didn't have much faith in them
Yeah,
coming back into St.
they
Louis
just
for Game 7.
like the top line guys like Radulov, Zuccarello, Ben, Sagan, like that. That's nice. That's why they got as far as they did. And yeah, they generate offense off the blue line with Heiskanen and Klingberg, who we talked about a million times. Who each were incredible in the first two rounds. So props to them on having a great series. But yeah, like outside of their top six, they just don't really have a whole lot. And ultimately, I think the Blues just have more depth, pretty
Yes.
much at every
Mm-hmm.
position. And I guess Bennington just made a couple extra saves when they needed him to, and that was kind of the difference with Dallas not being able to generate much offensively there. But yeah, San Jose, they weathered a hell of a storm from Colorado all series. Colorado was buzzing. I think we each took the Sharks, but wow, Colorado. I'm sure as you've probably read, and you folks at home have probably read every article, every other podcast you listen to, every analyst you've seen on TV. I mean, yeah, this is a team, this is a franchise that's not going anywhere. A lot of talent coming, just ridiculous. The speed they play, they play. They're probably the fastest team in the league. They're just outrageous. They get up and down. Tons of young talent. Obviously, McKinnon is staking his claim as one of the best players in the league. He was tremendous. Branton's a great, nice second option, and having a guy like Makar on the back end and Barry played great. Grubauer played better than expected, but yeah, at the end of the day, the Sharks, man, they got some big goals from some big time players. Logan Couture was awesome. This entire
Absolutely.
series.
Yeah.
Pavelski came out buzzing. Hurdle in Game 7, he gets demoted down once Pavelski comes back. He gets a big goal. Donskoy is a guy they were looking to get some scoring out of. He's been bad all playoffs. He gets a big goal and a nice turnaround play. But Dan, so one more thing. It's Martin Jones. A little preview. I'm going to take the Sharks in the conference final because the way Martin Jones is playing, it gives me confidence that they can do things. Because I was kind of like, when they were playing in Vegas, I'm like, they can't win with this guy goaltending. And he figured it out. He flipped the switch in the middle of that series, which is incredibly impressive. And he was great all series against Colorado. So props to him. But we would be remiss if we did not mention the controversy with the
Of course.
Colin Wilson goal from McKinnon. And McKinnon, right, gets hurt. Had to miss about 10 minutes of that game. Comes back in. It's 2-1. He makes a pass to Colin Wilson in front of the net. He ties it early in the second period. And on further review, they ruled that Gabriel Landeskog skate was not on the blue line. When he was going off the ice, on a change. The puck was in the offensive zone, got wheeled out, turnover in the neutral zone. They come back the other way. He's still not off the ice, and the Sharks make a bold, challenge. They could have gone shorthanded, but big swing in momentum, and then the Donskoy goal to make it 3-1 after. It could have been 2-2. I mean, Colorado got another one, but I think you had some thoughts on it, and obviously Colorado fans are going to be upset about it, but I just want to know what your thoughts are on the rule in general,
Sure.
that type of play, what you thought. Do you think the right call was made after review? Just what do you think on that, Dan?
Well, I just want to know what took Landeskog so long to get off the ice. That's all I want to know. Because he was standing there for seemingly forever. Like, he was at that board for so long, and I don't know what he was doing. Anyway, that's kind of beside the point. As the rule states, it's offside. I think the correct call was made. It's tough, though. It's really tough because Landeskog is not a part of that play. He has no bearing on any of that zone time whatsoever. And obviously he wasn't even on the ice for the goal. But as the rule states, if you choose to change up in the offensive zone, your replacement has to tag up. And I don't think he tagged up properly by the rule standards. There's still some kind of areas where I might be misunderstanding something. But as far as I'm aware, the correct call was made on the ice. It's just tough to see. It's tough for Avs fans, and I just wish that we could get. Well, we did with St. Louis and Dallas, but in Game 7s especially, I just wish we could get final scores where there is no controversy, because that's two now that San Jose, you could say, got lucky, very lucky breaks with the 5-minute major against Vegas, allowing them to score 4 goals in rapid succession to get back in the game, get the lead, and then this. And that, I don't think it taints San Jose's wins, at least in my book, because San Jose, at the end of the day, doesn't have anything to do with the officiating. And at the end of the day, San Jose had to take advantage of that 5-minute major. You could get that
every bit of advantage.
Yeah, you could get a 5-minute major and not score on it. And that's kind of what people forget is they got a power play. Well, yeah, you still got to score though, and they did. And with this one, it's just really tough. A lot of people were saying, well, he was onside. Well, if he's onside, that's fine. Now you got a case where it's too many men on the ice. So either way, would you not say, would you agree with that assessment, or would you disagree? I mean, it's such a fine line of knowing that he's not a part of the play, but he technically still is. So he's technically offside.
I think it was the correct enforcement of a bad rule.
Yes. Okay. I think that rule needs to. Yeah.
I'm not one of these people who's sees thinks every rule's got to change, but man, that's a hard one. I understand you got to tag up and you got to get off the ice, but I mean, you're trying to you don't want to alienate fans, and you don't want fans to think your sport is stupid. Like a guy with his back to the play, the opposite side of the rush. I mean, we're talking. Now calling judgment calls can get real fuzzy, giving jurisdiction to the refs to decide who's really part of a play and who's not. But man, that's a tough pill to swallow.
It's really tough. And I think you and I are basically in agreement. He's not a part of that play.
He's not. I just wish there's something they can do.
And it really is a case of it's the proper enforcement of a rule that's in that sort of, do we really need this one? It's kind of like, for me at least, it's kind of like the delay of games. Because now it's just guys trying to clear the puck off the glass and they get a little too under it. And I think, though that one's kind of that we'll save that for another day, that discussion for another day, but it's kind of in that same area where it's, do we really need this? Did that really need to be called back like that? I mean, I get why it was called back, but is that really relevant? So.
No, no, I agree. Yeah, but let's jump into well, what happened, and now we've got the conference finals. So maybe we'll uh, jump back east real quick. So we've got Carolina and Boston. Dan, maybe just hit the folks with your prediction, and obviously like a quick reason why
Yeah,
you think.
I think I'm going to take Boston in 6. I'd love to see Carolina in the Stanley Cup Finals. With everything that they've accomplished this year, with everything that they've been stacked up against, the whole bunch of jerks thing. But I think Boston's just going to be a little too overwhelming, especially at home in Boston. This is a veteran team. They've been in these Eastern Conference Finals before. They've won a Stanley Cup. They've lost a Stanley Cup. They know what it takes to get the job done. Rask is firing on all cylinders. He seems to be playing super well. I apologize, folks, if you heard that. My Siri just went off. Anyway, he looks really strong in net right now, and I'm a little. I know that they were able. I know that Carolina was able to push through injuries against the Islanders. With Mrazek going down and Van Riemsdyk, and I know they got Shepnikov back. But the Islanders are not the Boston Bruins. The Boston Bruins are way more talented. They're way more skilled. They're tough. They hit hard. One of the things I was going to bring up is David Backes needs to not be scratched. I think he is key for Boston's success. He is that guy that he might not bring a lot of offense to the table, but he's the guy that is going to bully the other team's skill guys. He's going to punish them every time they touch the puck, and he's going to make it that much harder for those guys to get time and space. And that's kind of how he was like that with the Blues. We've seen that as Hawks fans in the playoffs. He is stifling to play against. So I think when Boston wins, he's usually in the lineup. They scratched him early on against Toronto, and then they put him in, and it sort of changed the way Boston played, and they played a lot better. So I think leaving Backes in the lineup is going to be key. At this point, I think with Marchand, Pastrnak, whatever injury Pastrnak had, it's not there anymore. So that's another thing that makes me scared. Would make me scared as a Hurricanes fan. And they seem to have just hit their stride at the end of that series against Columbus. They're, like I said, I'm overusing it, but firing on all cylinders. Scoring goals, just playing the way that we've seen this Boston team play for 10 years now, something like that. So I'm going to go Boston in 6. I think Carolina is still going to be very tough to play at home. So I think Boston's definitely. Well, I mean, if they win in 6, Boston will steal one on the road. But we'll see what happens. Carolina's a resilient team. They don't really care, who you are or what weapons you got. They just come in and they play a really good team game. And let's not forget they got Mr. Game 7 on their side. And that dude, talk about being in the spotlight and playing very well. He is doing everything that is expected of him and then some. The timely goals, timely assists, all that sort of stuff. So this is going to be, for me, this is a really exciting Eastern Conference final that we don't get to see very often because we haven't seen Carolina here since 2009. So, but yeah, I'm going to stick with Boston in 6.
Yeah, I'm going to take Boston at 7, and I think for a lot of the same reasons you said. Carolina, obviously, it's a tough barn to play in down there in Raleigh, but Bruins got home ice advantage. Love the goaltending advantage here for Boston. I'm much more of a believer in Tuukka Rask than Peter Mrazek. Mrazek's played well, partially because of, or maybe not even partially, but obviously Carolina's defense with Pesci, Slavin, Falk, Dahan. Like, that's a nice group to be playing behind. So love the defense, but I think the Bruins got some young D and some veteran D that, you got Krug and Char who are vets, but at the same time, you've got McAvoy, who's obviously suspended game 1, but he and Carlo played really well, so I don't think their D corps are slouches either, but I just love the 200-foot game and I said it with Columbus. I said they're going to frustrate those guys. They did frustrate a lot of those top line guys. I mean, having home ice with Bergeron is a big deal. Pasternak's playing unbelievably well. DeBrusque is a great player. Just love the top end guys. I love what Carolina's got going on, right? Justin Williams is playing well. Tavo and Aho, the Finnish kids, they're exciting players to watch. But I really just think Boston's a little more well-rounded here. I think they've got. I mean, you can make the argument that maybe Carolina's got slightly better D, but Boston's still got a very good D corps. But I love Tuca and I love the high-end guys, Marchand, DeBrusque, Pasternak. Yeah, and then, they've got some depth on that team, too. They really grind you down, does Boston. So I just think they're so well-rounded, and the home ice advantage is huge. So give me Boston and 7. I still think Carolina is a tough team to play against, and I think these teams are very, very even. But at the end of the day, just seeing the way Boston was able to respond against Columbus, who's a team with great goaltending. They can skate. They can play the heavy game. They can throw a lot at you. They also play in a tough building, right? And Boston handled the games 5 and 6 with just they played those games perfectly. So I love the way they ended their series. I'm a big believer in momentum. Boston's been playing. They're a little more up to game speed. So I expect them to get off to a hot start in the series, but I think Carolina's going to hang in there. And I know that's not so bold because it's the conference finals, but whatever. And then moving along.
Also real quick, Kevin also had Boston in 6, probably for a lot of the same reasons.
Yeah,
I
so
think.
we've all got Boston.
Yeah,
Got 'em at 7, but,
like you said, it's not to take anything away from Carolina. It's certainly not. They're a great team, and they're playing so
Boston,
well.
And Boston just buried one.
They just bought one?
Yeah, they just potted one.
Who was it?
Yeah. Oh, man, who was it? A defenseman came down.
Oh, boy.
Can't really tell who it was.
Well, anyway,
Steve Kampfer. It was Steven Kampfer who's in because the boy's out.
Okay. But yeah, just to finish up what you said, the well-rounded thing I think is a good word. They're both teams are really good. It's just that Boston's a little bit better, I think. So yeah, you want to move to the West to the Sharks and the Avs?
Yeah, you want to start it off, but
sure.
I think we've got. Yeah, go ahead and start it off. I think we're gonna have
not Sharks and I said Sharks and Avs. I meant Sharks and Blues. Sorry, my bad, folks. This is going to be a bloodbath, as it always is in the West. I honestly I could pick either team. I really could. They're both playing tremendous. Binnington looks cool as a cucumber as usual. The way that they dismantled the Stars in Game 7, just the pressure shots. Your best defense is your offense. But I also really like the way the Sharks played their Game 7. Pavelski, people were a little worried with the injury. Oh, would he be okay? Is he going to be up to game speed? He's fine. Gets a goal, gets an assist, no big deal. I am rooting for San Jose. I want Thornton to get his cup finally. I'd love to see Pavelski and a bunch of those other guys, Couture, to get a cup. As far as buildings go, they're both equal. You were just talking about tough buildings. All 4 of these teams have tremendously tough buildings to play in. The Shark Tank is going to be humming. I believe they have home ice. Is that correct? Actually, I don't know if that's correct or not. Let me take a look. It is. Okay, it is Shark Tank for Game 1. And that's going to be important is whoever has home ice, especially, like I said, because of how tough these 2 buildings are to play in. I'm going to take the Sharks in 7. I think this one's going to go to the distance for sure. Both teams are not going to give in. And, I think these are going to be really tight, evenly contested games. I could see more than one of these going into an overtime or 2, if not more. But yeah, I'm going to take the Sharks in 7. I don't necessarily think there's any reason why I'm picking the Sharks over the Blues. It's just a gut feeling, because like I said, I could really see either team going to the Stanley Cup final, as I'm sure you could, Nick. And so with that, it's just a gut feeling for me, really. And my gut says San Jose, so I'm going to pass it off to you now.
Yeah. It's a real interesting series, right? Because both teams have, and wow, Sebastian Aho just tied it 3 seconds into a power play. So this is going to be an exciting series. But
see, they're tough. They're tough.
I know. Cardiac Canes, baby. But no, what was I gonna say? Yeah,
Sharks Blues.
Sharks Blues. Two goaltenders where they've played well recently, but I feel like each are a ticking time bomb in their own right. We've seen Martin Jones melt down. Bennington's a young guy. He hasn't really faced a whole lot of adversity yet outside of the one game against Winnipeg where he relinquished 6. The goaltending's interesting. The Blues team defense has been fantastic, but so is San Jose's. I mean, you've got Burns and Vlasic and Carlson on one end, and then you've got Parayko and Pietrangelo on the other end. And then you've got obviously guys like Tarasenko, but the Sharks, wow. I think I'm real excited about the Sharks. I'm going to take them in 7 as well. I know 7's kind of a cop-out in the conference final, but I think Pavelski's still a good player. He's just outside of his prime, but he is shown he has plenty left in the tank. But him coming back is so huge because he makes their lineup so much more balanced. Now they build 4 legit lines, and that's not to say St. Louis doesn't, but I kind of like the depth scoring that San Jose has. I would take their bottom 6 over the Blues's. Jones is playing real well, home ice advantage. Yeah, and then I think it's the intangible things here, right? It's kind of like Joe Thornton's going to win a cup. It's going to be this year. And part of me is just going to pick them because I think even more so than Carolina and Boston, I think these teams are incredibly even matched. They both can play a little heavy. They both have goalies that can step up at the right time. They both have real good players on the D Corps. They both roll 4 really good lines. It's going to be, they each play 200 feet. It's going to be fucking like a bloodbath, like you said. But give me the intangible of it would just be fun to see Joe Thornton play his old squad, the Boston Bruins, in the Stanley Cup. That'd be quite a story if the team he captained that traded him in November of 2005 was the team he beat to win his first cup, and then he rode off in the sunset. That'd be quite a story. So, yeah. Just the intangible will put it over for me. But,
very poetic. I like it.
But yeah, at the same rate, Kevin took St.
Louis in 6.
That was his cup pick. That was his Stanley Cup pick. So he's riding it out. So he's got David Backes having a rematch against the Blues, and we've got Thornton rematch against the Bruins.
That'd be interesting. Poor Carolina fans are going, well, fuck you guys.
Yeah,
but
they
honestly, I could see any of these 4, and that's usually that. That's what you want. You want the last 4 teams, 2 aside, to be the best in each conference. And based on these playoffs, I would say these are probably the best teams that are going right now. And all 4 of them are they're all very well coached. They all play. We're kind of repeating ourselves, I guess, but it amazing buildings to play in, tough buildings to play in. Their cities are behind them 100%. Yeah, Carolina on the bandwagon a little bit, but they're embracing it and they're loving it with the post-game celebrations at home and the bunch of jerks. And I love that. I love seeing a city get behind a team 100%. And obviously, San Jose fans have been itching for a Stanley Cup since the team's birth. Yeah, and another team that's been waiting even longer is St. Louis. They've been around for 40 plus years, 50 years, whatever it's been. And, Boston's the only one that's won a cup in recent memory because the 2 of them haven't. And so, I'm just really excited for these Eastern and Western Conference finals, man.
Yeah, all I know is NBC's going to throw a shit fit if it's Carolina St. Louis.
Yeah, they will, but whatever. I won't. I'll be excited.
Doesn't matter for us. I would watch the hell out of that. It'd be so fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's all we got for now. So we'll check back in next week with a little see the progress of these conference finals go. So you've got our predictions and our analysis of what happened, what we think is going to happen. So hopefully we'll have Kevin back next week. But Dan, thanks for joining me this week. And folks,
of course,
follow us at Twitter at GWTF podcast _ and letmebefrankblog.com. That's let me be as in boy, Frank blog.com and at LMBF Sports. That's Let Me Be Frank Twitter. So for Nick Phillips and Dan Merritt and the Go With The Flow team, thanks for listening this week and enjoy the conference final.
Absolutely, folks. Sorry for sounding like a wet dog a little bit, but we'll be fine next week. We'll see you then.
Enjoy getting in one this week.
Oh, right. I will.
See you.